My Adventure with Superman has always been a mixed bag when it comes to its villains. Some being bland, hollow shells of previous versions, and others that have potential but not give enough focus to really cook beyond a serviceable antagonist, with one major exception to that criticism. But with Season 3, a particular villain the show had on the back burner during Season 2 came to fruition. While drastically different from typical versions of the character, he, much like Brainiac, raised the bar with Adventure's villains, and became a true dark mirror to our beloved Man of Steel. However, as good of an antagonist as he was, he ultimately had a glaring issue that frankly is a frequent one with My Adventure with Superman as a whole, one that keeps him from achieving greatness as the show's best villain. Hey team, Phantom Skull the Super Security VTuber here, and today we're looking at My Adventure with Superman's mechanical monstrosity, Cyborg Superman, aka Hank Henshaw. We'll be going over what makes this hate-filled cyber demon such a step up from most villains in the show, but also go over the major problems that keep him from taking Brainiac's crown as the best of the best. So let's dive on in and look at this show's silver medalist of villainy. Spoilers for the first half of Season 3 ahead. Let's start with a brief overview of the character. Captain Hank Henshaw is a dashing ace pilot, astronaut, one of Star Labs' best PR guys, and also an old college friend of our hot mess reporter Lois Lane. We don't get to know much about Henshaw beyond that, more on that topic later, but he soon falls into the anti-alien pipeline thanks to Lex Luthor and becomes a maliciously volatile critic of Superman, and happily joins the authoritarian Human Defense Corps as one of its pilots. During Brainiac's invasion, he's shot down while leading an HDC air squadron and left horrifically mutilated and on life support. Thanks to Lex and his company's cybernetics, he's able to rebuild him as a heavily armed and powerful cyborg, turning him into LexCorp's own private superhero in a scheme to replace their mutually hated enemy Superman. But due to Henshaw's own dark nature now spiraling into xenophobic madness and delusions of grandeur, the deranged captain soon turns on his billionaire master and the very people he claimed to represent. Threatening all of Metropolis out of petty spite, Superman and friends find themselves in a desperate battle to stop the genocidal cyborg before it's too late. We're not going to cover a lot about the comics version since, like a lot of Adventure's characters, Henshaw is drastically different outside of sharing the name, intense hatred of Superman, and being a mutilated cyborg copy of the Man of Steel. What's interesting about Adventure's Hank is, much like another fan-favorite villain Parasite, this version of the character is a blend of two Superman villains and, again, yoinking some Lex Luthor characterization. Which is a little hilarious when you think about the fact both Lex and Hank share Max Mittelman as their voice actor. There's still a lot of Cyborg Superman baked into the character, keeping the all-star astronaut who's turned into a crazed cyborg copy of Superman and driven to insane hatred after all. But there's also a lot of Metallo built into him, with the Kryptonite power core and a similar obsessive drive to best and defeat Superman out of pride, and also being driven insane by their unfeeling cybernetic bodies. While it's very minimal and surface level, you can also see a lot of Homelander as a potential inspiration for this version of Hank. Given that they share similar bigoted loser who thinks he's an apex predator vibes the two share, along with the real-life parallels we're about to cover. What's funny is a core aspect of Adventure Henshaw's character is something I feel Adventure's Lex has been sorely missing that I consider iconic aspects of most modern Luthors. An intense, petty, insecurity-ridden obsession with killing Superman out of a mix of xenophobia and angry mediocre white man energy. When we first meet Hank, non-comics fans would probably not suspect him of any future supervillainy. With his brief introduction, he's very charming, dashing, a friend of Lois's, and representing Star Labs, one of the iconic supporting and often good-aligned super science companies in the DC universe. But in between that first meeting and when we see him again, he's become enraptured by Lex's anti-alien dog whistling. Suddenly that friendly Chad mask drops and Henshaw shows a much colder, more spiteful side of himself. He becomes uncontrollably angry when he realizes Superman is part of the same dating game show he's on, that's intended to be a fun, harmless night of raising money for children's charities. In fact, he uses the opportunity to hijack and derail the show to go on a xenophobic rant against the guest star of Steel, and stomps off like a petulant child when he realizes the other contestants and the audience aren't siding with his bigoted meltdown.
You may have the masses fooled, but those who matter are keeping their eye on you. Earth is for Earthlings, Superman.
This interaction would solidify a unique character flaw Adventures Hank has that most versions of the character lack. In general, most Henshaws blame Superman for their horrific transformation and potential loss of their wife depending on the timeline, in spite of him having nothing to do with it. Adventures Henshaw shows that his hatred stems from both personal and racist sources. As Season 3 would touch on, Henshaw was considered Metropolis's best, if not the pinnacle of humanity. A daring pilot, explorer, and astronaut, Henshaw was designed as the classical ideal male protagonist. He was often touted as the man who would lead humanity to the stars, and a brighter future for all. But then came this powerful alien who floated in and, in his words, took it all away. This is another iconic modern Luthor quality. The game show scene would foreshadow something that would be touched on in more detail in Season 3. That despite his status and bravado, Hank is a deeply insecure person who needs to make everything about him. He chose to derail a charity game show meant to help children to use the opportunity to blast Superman as a threatening foreigner on camera and with an audience, but becomes incensed and storms off in a huff when St. Cloud and the audience not only refuse to entertain his bigoted accusations, but look at him like he was insane. He flat out insults their intelligence, barking that the people that matter are going to deal with Superman soon enough, showing his so-called defender of humanity mindset only extends to those that side with him. Like other versions of Lex, Henshaw has a narcissistic outlook on his own self-worth, and gasses himself up as the peak of human exceptionalism, who's the only real Superman. A being like Superman, by their definition, is a mockery of all humanity stands for. A powerful alien with unknown genetic feats who will ruin humanity's natural potential and prevent them, the so-called peaks of humanity, from leading the way to the future. In truth, this is just the pretty little lie Henshaw tells himself to cover the fact that he's jealous that the people who adored and cheered him as the man of tomorrow now cheer someone else. And the fact that it's a foreigner from another planet makes him seethe even more. Much like Adventures Lex's characterization as a grifter, Henshaw is a similar parallel to the type of person who would fall for such xenophobic dog whistles. They say when it comes to right-wing bullshit, you can break down its supporters between the hustler trying to make a buck off of some suckers, and the sucker who actually believes the hustler. Hank, the insecure racist, is very much the sucker in this analogy. In general, the show's humanity first, Earth is for humans rhetoric is one-for-one paralleling the tiringly moronic America first-minded xenophobes of our own reality. The same petty, sadistic apathy masked in flimsy, fake patriot packaging, just with immigrants and other undesirables replaced with aliens and metahumans. He's a thug, a bigot, and a sadistic egomaniac who enjoys flexing what power he has and abusing it when he can. He buys into Lex's anti-alien nonsense, along with some pretty toxic wannabe alpha male bullshit, such as vomiting about the food chain, and how guys like him are at the top of it. His narcissism and extremist beliefs on foreigners, aka aliens, are all hallmarks of this type of loser. Those parallels will become even more blatant in Season 3, with his brief tenure as a corporate superhero being one disastrous analogy for police brutality. When he hits the streets of Metropolis, he shows zero restraint, treating every offender as a criminal worthy of getting their face caved in, and civilians looking on in terror at this brutish figure, not emanating the same hope and security Superman has shown them. He savagely beats down on a terrified Toyman long after he stopped being a threat, punches a purse snatcher into a light pole, probably destroying the dude's spine, and he flat out comes close to murdering Entergain in broad daylight because Banshee damaged his faceplating while just stealing some shit. All the while chastising the terrified civilians for looking at him so harshly and declaring Superman should be tougher on crime. And later arrogantly says he has the power, so he doesn't need to answer to people he considers his lessers. The defender of humanity, everybody. Episode 3 in particular really showcases the stark differences between Hank and Clark, both as superheroes and as people. Henshaw is a vain, brutish, abusive cop lording his power and authority over others, leaving everyone fearful of him. Meanwhile, Clark is more akin to a friendly security guard or firefighter who's just there to help, tries to de-escalate situations, and only uses a moderate amount of force to handle a situation. The public smear campaign against Superman in the early seasons is long gone, and the people have seen through his actions who he is, and trust Clark far more than the homegrown American thug Henshaw has shown himself as. And their response to power shows the wide gap between them. Superman would lose his powers stopping Hank's rampage, and barely an episode later was instinctually putting himself between innocent kids and a mad gunman, even knowing he was vulnerable. Meanwhile, the second Henshaw got his power, he immediately became a vain, murderous narcissist who thinks he's a god and happily uses it to step on everyone he claimed to represent. That dynamic is why Clark will always be the true man of tomorrow. But behind Henshaw's arrogant apex predator and humanity first nonsense was a battered, broken man in more ways than one. The loss of most of his organic body would do a number on his psyche, with the only things keeping him in check being the public's adoration, which he loses instantly, and Lex's restraining bolt, which he quickly learns to hack. Once both of these are gone, nothing is left but the vengeful and petty Cyborg, who now sees everyone as his enemy for turning their backs on him. And despite his clumsy attempts in their first fight, Henshaw shows himself to be a one-man Skynet when fully unchained and no longer caring about his image, to the point he decimates the planet and needed a time-traveling John Kent to be sent back to stop him. In episode 5, he completely drops the mask, going full Robo-Homelander and uses Lex's drones to decimate the city, threatening to kill the very people he claimed to represent unless Superman and Supergirl confronted him. During this brutal fight, he's dropped all pretenses of being a hero or even a good person. His bold claims of reclaiming humanity's future from aliens like Superman have been replaced by him whining about how he was the future and how Superman stole his future. When Superboy enters the fray and lets slip that he's Clark's son, Hank becomes enraged both at the idea of the aliens breeding, and Supe's once again having something he can't do to his robotic body.
I will never have a family! You get one!
I guess Lex couldn't save Captain Henshaw Jr. Suddenly his psychotic, impotent rage is making a lot more sense. For as impressive as he makes himself out in his all-out brawl against the Man of Steel, all it does is mask the fact that he's a severely mentally disturbed man blaming aliens for all his problems, and seeking the most destructive option to curtail his own self-hatred over his new artificial body and how nobody cheers for him anymore. A sad, petty monster that would rather destroy everything out of misplaced blame over owning up to his own mistakes and shortcomings. Before we talk about Henshaw's grand finale, it's time to address the elephant in the room with him. After all that careful discussion, you might be wondering, well, where's the problem with Henshaw? He sounds like a solid villain. Oh, he would be, if the show gave him a crumb of focus beyond 5 minutes of bare minimum scenes. Apparently it all needed to go towards Jimmy's journey of cucking himself this entire season. While I exaggerate that last bit, what's not exaggerated is just how ass the pacing for Henshaw's character arc is. Hell, the breakneck pacing is not only a problem with My Adventures with Superman as a whole, but most serialized animated shows in general. These days, animation, particularly young adult action-oriented ones like Adventures, are in a perpetual state of never knowing if this season is the last they'll have to work with before the soulless executive overlords decide to pull the plug on it, regardless of how well it's doing or not. Doubly insured if you're a popular Netflix animated show. This practice of apathetically reducing serialized animated shows to the bare minimum of episode numbers and possibly canceling them on cliffhangers has left showrunners paranoid of thinking this is all they've got to tell their story, leaving many shows with rushed plot lines and character arcs that have the pacing of a hummingbird on crack cocaine. Adventures was in an especially precarious situation. My Adventure with Superman, while technically its own thing, was part of the old and now very dead DCEU era of productions. So when the transition to the DCU began while Season 2 was releasing, and a lot of planned shows and movies were getting shuttered, there was an awkward question of where our anime-esque Superman show stood in this new franchise. Thankfully, DCU lead James Gunn has been very supportive of the show, and letting them do their own thing, along with continuing plans for Season 3. But after that, not much has been said. At the time of this video's production, there has been no solid confirmations of a Season 4, so for all intents and purposes, Season 3 is about all we've got left. With this potentially the end of the road, it becomes pretty clear they're cramming as many ideas as they can into this alleged final season. I mean, we introduced Bizarro only for him to dip after episode 2, we have John's time travel plot, both of them apparently, Lois and Clark's settling down side plot, Jimmy and Kara's very mixed bag of a soap opera that frankly should have been handled in one episode, not counting all the villain of the week subplots, and then we have Lex and Henshaw's plot to become the new hero of Metropolis. And this was all in the first 5 episodes. Nothing has room to breathe in this show. Hell, Season 2 had the same problem. Henshaw shows up for less than 5 minutes total in Season 2, and in that time, he goes from friend of Lois and helpful Chad, to xenophobic bigot crashing out on a charity game show, to a bootlicking pilot for the HDC and gets shot down. Oh, did I forget to mention Henshaw had a wife? The show apparently did! Where the hell was she in this entire affair? Realistically, she was probably cut for time because of all the bullshit I just talked about, and they forgot to cut that specific line. But it has led to some interesting fan theories that tie to his mental breakdown, such as her possibly divorcing him due to his growing instability and xenophobia over aliens, or possibly making her up to try and sound more impressive while talking to Lois and Clark. On that note, let's talk about Hank and Lois's relationship, or lack thereof. Season 3 has them act like they have some deep relationship, enough for her to be hurt by him becoming an enforcer for the anti-alien Lex Corp, and a crazed Henshaw hesitating for a moment before trying to kill her and everyone else in Lex's office. Except we don't see that. Literally, the only scenes where they interact are the very first introduction episode of Season 2, and then when they see each other in Season 3, Episode 2. That's it. A lot of it feels like they're implied to be ex-lovers, or there was an unrecorded affection of some sort. Between Lois's news segment commenting on how he's not a hero anymore, setting him off more than anything else, and the fact that he hesitates in trying to kill her implies that he had some kind of affection for her. But again, no time to explore that, I guess. Hank's biggest problem is his character arc in both seasons are rushed to shit. Nothing has time to breathe, and a lot of his moments feel unearned because the show spends the barest minimum of focus on it. I know the relationship drama is a key hook of the show, but could they not have spared 5 or 10 minutes for our main villain? The wildest thing is, Henshaw's final episode feels like a season finale, and he was just the mid-season threat. How much more shit are they gonna pack in these last 5 episodes? Now, Brainiac gets whole episodes of focus as Season 2's big bad. While we don't get his entire life story, we get enough. Plus he had the advantage of his story tied to the Season 1 myth arc of Krypton's dark past as conquerors to work off of. Henshaw needed an episode focused on him in a similar vein that he sadly never gets. I'll wrap up this pacing rant by mentioning how I feel Henshaw's story arc could have been improved if they gave him some more focus. Season 2 wouldn't have needed much, but he'd have a little bit more focus. I'd have 2 pivotal scenes. First, I'd have him interact with the gang more, possibly help out with another situation before he fell down the anti-alien pipeline. In this scene, he could have some mild moments of jealousy or pettiness, like him trying to flex on Clark when he finds out she's Lois's boyfriend, and possibly make some snide comments about Superman that shows his insecurity when compared to him. And then when he has his big blowout meltdown at the game show, have Lois confront him over it, with Lois shocked and hurt at how he's acting. And in turn, Henshaw would blow up at Lois over her taking the alien side, and digging into her insecurities about being with Clark that she's been dealing with all season. Season 3 would be about dedicating at least 1 episode to him trying and failing to keep up the superhero act before his big meltdown in episodes 3 and 4, while also showing his growing pettiness and instability at how people look at him. Maybe have a scene of Hank visiting his old co-workers at Star Labs and becoming irritated at how uncomfortable they are around him due to his extremist beliefs and his anger issues. We'd also have an actual scene of Lois confronting him about being Lex's goon, and realizing how far deep down the anti-alien rabbit hole he is, to the point he looks at her like the crazy one for not being on his side, both showing his growing xenophobia and his selfish egomania, which would make the scene of her reporting on Hank not being the hero anymore hit all the harder. To be honest, his mental decline should have been a subplot all season, with episode 5 as the season 3 finale, but it is what it is, and to be honest, as rushed as it was, Henshaw's themes and character arc are still one of the best of the show's villains, particularly his tragic but deserved end. During their final battle, Henshaw goes all out, gleefully using his kryptonite core and advanced weapons to brutalize the Super family, all the while letting his hatred and body dysmorphia devolve him into a deranged, half-feral monstrosity. But when he tries to gleefully kill John in front of his dad, Clark, who's already on death's door, unlocks Ultra Instinct and fights past the kryptonite to brutalize the wannabe apex predator, destroying the kryptonite core and boldly declaring that the future is for everyone, not just for a selfish, monstrous bully like him. While it cost him his powers, Clark, like a real hero, put everything on the line to protect everyone from the selfish monster that only vowed to protect those that worshipped him. However, like most petty authoritarian madmen, Henshaw was a sore loser, activating a self-destruct feature in his body, ready to take Supe's and most of the city out with him in one final act of spite. But the final nail in his entire supremacist mindset is hammered in when he notices John isn't affected by the kryptonite and discovers he's half-human. Finding out the kid he tried to brutalize was half-human, and a time traveler sent to stop him from destroying the future, breaks him. His Defender of Humanity delusions finally shatter, and the weight of what he's done hits him. In his final moments, he sees a vision of his former life, the man who would be humanity's future, only to see a wave of human-alien hybrids flying to the stars hand in hand. Humanity's future of diversity and understanding with their alien neighbors, despite his spiteful attempts to stop it, was inevitable, and Henshaw was being left behind, which was ultimately his true fear. What I love about Henshaw's final moments is the ambiguity of it all. Did he quietly accept that this diverse future of humans and aliens was the path humanity would take, and lamented he wouldn't be able to join them? And in a last moment of true humanity shut himself down before the bomb went off? Or was this the pathetic weeping of a bigot realizing the diverse future he fought, killed, and threatened to destroy was happening in spite of him, and humanity was moving beyond small-minded people like him, who ultimately died from his own self-made despair before his bomb could go off? Regardless, Superman can do nothing but pity his dying enemy, saving his family and the people of Metropolis at great cost. While I'm curious to see how the hell Lex is weaseling out of consequences for his corporate cyborg going homeland on everyone, this, as far as we know, is where Hank's story ends. Hank Henshaw was a vain, petty man who destroyed himself with his own hatred and obsessions. He let himself fall down a xenophobic rabbit hole that isolated him from everyone until he only had his own delusions of self-importance to keep him company. He was a dark mirror to our lovable Clark, showing someone without his humility and empathy getting power, and the destructive outcome of it all. But for all his power, he ultimately died alone and unloved. Not because of any sinister alien agenda, but because of his own actions and spiteful refusal to accept any future except the one he deemed his to control. But as he learned far too late, the future is for everyone. And despite his deranged attempts to force it into the darkness, that bright, diverse future he feared was coming, with his most hated enemy leading the way to that brighter tomorrow. While Hank's character arc was stymied by the show's abysmal pacing problems and refusing to give him anything but the barest minimum of focus, he's still one of the best villains of My Adventures with Superman, and frankly one of the best adaptations of Cyborg Superman. This tragic but pathetic monster shows the downward spiral of people who fall into extremist belief systems, but also shows the narcissistic selfishness that drives people deeper into these hateful ideologies. Hank was a selfish, insecure man who chose to make that everyone else's problem, which oh boy is that a relevant problem these days. In spite of the show's poor pacing with him, he's still joining Brainiac at the table when I revise my Adventures villain ranking list when Season 3 concludes. And while I'm frustrated at the pacing problems, if this incredible arc was the midpoint, I can't wait to see what else the show has to give us as we hit the second half of this amazing show. But I swear to God, please, just wrap up this Kara and Jimmy will they or won't they subplot. We all know it's coming, just stop leaving the villains with scraps to focus on Jimmy in the cock chair, damn it! I can't take this shit anymore! Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for checking out my video. If you liked it, be sure to leave a like and a comment. Both really help the channel as we go onwards and upwards. What are your thoughts on Hank Henshaw? Do you agree with my takes on him and the show's pacing problems? Let me know down below. Be sure to subscribe for more super security fun. I also stream here and on Twitch, so come join us one night. More Adventures videos to come and some other topics, so hopefully I'll see you all soon. Thanks again, and remember to be safe, love always, and remember to always fight for what's right. Catch you later.